Hello, this is Angela with Parkrose Permaculture. It is a very, very hot day today. We're going to get into the 90s, which is unseasonably warm for Portland, Oregon. So I'm not actually doing yard work today. I know that I don't have to water my plants because they are mulched with thick carpets of mulch that conserve water and hold it in so they can handle 1 or 2 hot days without needing to be watered. Some of the plants may wilt a little bit in the heat, but I know that is a natural way that certain species, particularly those without hairy or leathery leaves, conserve water and prevent water loss. So I'm not going to stress out about it. I'm just going to stay cool and avoid sunburns. I'm going to make sure my ducks get a good run through the sprinkler later today, probably my poodles too. And I'm going to go water up at my folks' garden because they need help with their bonsais and potted plants, but other than that, I'm hiding out in the shade. I wanted to make a video though, talking about something that's really been weighing on me and pressing on me, and something that keeps coming up over and over. So I don't like to be in front of a camera, and I've gotten a number of comments of asking why I'm not in front of the camera more. I don't enjoy doing that. So I'm gonna share my thoughts with y'all and try and show you some views of the garden while I talk. And I would love to hear your thoughts and your insights and your comments and questions in the comment section. I would love to have a conversation about this thing that I'm going to talk about. First of all, though, for a little treat, I have been picking my lunch, so I might be eating while I talk to y'all. I have a lot of marionberries and the very first of the blueberries and red raspberries and black caps and the tail end of the service berries. And I try and pick a big bowl of fruit for lunch every day, and often sometimes for breakfast as well. So, and that's not true, sometimes for dessert in the evening as well too. So right now when berries are fresh and warm off the plant and I can only enjoy them that way for a short period of time, I pick berries to freeze. And some of those frozen berries will get turned into jam and jelly when it's cool out and I feel okay running the oven. And I also try and just pick in a kind of browsing, grazing, foraging mindset every day to enjoy that fresh bowl of berries while I can. So this thing that's been on my mind, in permaculture, I think that it is a really unique and different way of looking at our interaction with the environment and with our garden, and that can draw a lot of people in. And I think that gardening is kind of the gateway to looking at permaculture or beginning to understand what permaculture is. But permaculture is not gardening. So I got involved in permaculture 23 years ago. As a college student, I went to a conference sponsored by the Women Food and Agriculture Network in Iowa. And there I learned about community-supported agriculture. I learned about small-scale biodynamic farming. I learned from women who were having a livestock operated farm. I met a woman who was still plowing her field with oxen and using all traditional non-mechanized methods, which was fascinating to me. And that got me started in permaculture because I was interested in environmentalism and I was interested in gardening. So I came to permaculture from this angle of environmentalism and organic gardening. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s and I started having kids that I really came to understand much more about permaculture. Now, I had read everything. I had read Bill Mollison's books many times over. I understood that the 3 ethics of permaculture are earth care, people care, and fair share. The third way of thinking of that is share the surplus or equal distribution of resources and returning surplus to the earth and other people. So I knew that, but I hadn't really internalized it for myself. I still thought of it as a way to have passive solar design for your house and a way to have a local food system and a way to garden organically. But permaculture is so much more than that. So if we look at the 3 ethics, we look at what the intent is in permaculture. I think it comes back to the concept of permaculture is about the interconnectedness of all things. It's not hippie gardening. It's not environmentalism. And it's about the interconnectedness of my trees with the fungal life in the soil. It's about the connection between the borage and the seeds it produces and the house finches that feed off of it. It's about the connection between the honeybees and native bees and beetles and hoverflies and wasps that pollinate the food that I eat and the flowers that I enjoy. It's about the connection of tree to tree underground. It's about the connection of us as people to our landscape, to the food that we grow. But it is also about the connection between individual people and between a person and their community, between a person and the global community of humanity. And it is about how what we do impacts the environment around us, either the cultivated environment or it impacts the wild environment, but it also impacts the humans around us. And I think part of my frustration is that I've seen lately in my own Facebook page, Parkrose Permaculture, and my own Instagram, also Parkrose Permaculture, and also in Facebook groups and on other pages on Instagram. Like if you look at the hashtag permaculture on Instagram, so much of it has been, I don't want to say co-opted because that's not the right word. Permaculture, because it is a way to have productive, sustainable gardening and food production, it piques the interest of kind of a prepper survivalist mentality. But for me, I find that really problematic. And if you're a prepper or like you're into survivalism, that's cool. Like emergency preparedness, disaster preparedness, that's awesome. In fact, I'm a really big fan of transition towns and the whole concept of transition in terms of resilience and preparing for disaster. And I'm going to drop a link to transition towns in the description. But I've noticed that there's a bent lately on people who look at permaculture and they think it is about self-sufficiency. And they think it is about the individual and their homestead and being self-sufficient. And I'm really struggling with that. I'm struggling with the attitudes and the comments and the outlook that I'm seeing, because permaculture is not about independence. It is about interdependence. So what we do impacts other people and it impacts the environment. And our goal in permaculture is to make sure that the way we impact the environment and our garden and the wildlife is regenerative, not extractive. And I would encourage folks to look at the way you interact with people should also be regenerative and not extractive. So where am I getting my clothing? Is it made by 14-year-old girls in a sweatshop in Bangladesh? Where am I getting my food that I can't grow myself? Are the migrant farm workers being paid a living wage and given good health care? If not, then the clothes that I'm wearing and the food that I'm eating is exploitive and it is not regenerative. And in permaculture, just as we wouldn't desertify and exploit an environment to grow our food, we can't exploit other people. I'm also going to drop in the comments something about social permaculture. There's some really good books about social permaculture. So because permaculture is a design system for how humans can live in a way that is sustainable, we're going to come down here and visit my ducks, in a way that is sustainable and regenerative. It necessarily involves how we interact with other people. People don't live in isolation. The reality is we live with other people. We live in community. And we can say that we have a self-sufficient kind of survivalist lifestyle, but the reality is, for the vast majority of us, we still have an impact on other people. Whether it's our investments, is our IRA portfolio investing in companies that are ecologically destructive? Are we investing in companies that don't pay a living wage to their workers or have unsafe working conditions? These are all things that are important to think about when we really want to examine what permaculture is. If we say that we're permaculturists, what are we actually saying? And I just want to encourage folks to realize that social permaculture, the second permaculture ethic, care for people, is 1/3 of the founding ideals of permaculture. So please don't think that permaculture is just about gardening, because it's not. It's really about our relationship with everything living and non-living, and what impact we as people have on other humans and on the environment. So our goal is smart, effective design that improves our quality of life, but it does so in a way that doesn't extract from anybody else, and it doesn't extract from the environment. And the reality is, when we're extracting from the environment, we are taking from future generations. So I really struggled with, there's some prominent folks in permaculture who are very anti-child, very childist. There are folks in permaculture who are very much uninterested in looking at how you interact with your community and what social permaculture is. And there are folks in permaculture who really don't look beyond their own zone, right? So you have your zone 0, which is your house, your home. Permaculture extends all the way from that really close nuclear look all the way to a global view of humanity and ecosystems. And I think it's really important to look at how we are filtering our understanding of permaculture based on our own biases and our own predisposed notions and our own agendas and goals. Because when you start to look at what permaculture is in reality, it feels really uncomfortable. I'm a big fan of Brené Brown, and one of my one of the most important things that she says, it's not my favorite because it doesn't feel good, is that people, particularly white people, but people need to learn to sit in their discomfort. And I think about that a lot, especially in a Western, really comfortable way of living. We aren't used to sitting with criticism, and we aren't used to sitting with ideas that disrupt our comfort. And I think that that is really important, to be okay with having uncomfortable feelings. In fact, it's something that I say to my kids a lot. If they're having a hard time and they're really angry and upset, I am a big fan of saying, you might have to feel upset about that for a while. It's okay to be uncomfortable, and we don't have to have an immediate need to get rid of our discomfort. Our discomfort can teach us something. And I think in permaculture, when you are faced with very real questions of how am I living? Is the way I'm living extractive, or is it regenerative? That can feel really uncomfortable, because we all like some of the easy, simple, comfortable ways of doing things. It doesn't mean those things are ethical, and it doesn't mean those things are in keeping with permaculture principles. And if we really are following permaculture, taking what we learn in the garden about the connectedness of all things and how that can promote abundance, and taking those concepts and applying them to society, applying them to communities, and realizing that we can bring abundance to our communities as well as to our gardens. And I think that for me, I've just been struggling with seeing a lack of that understanding. And maybe it's because I'm a parent and I have a whole lot of kids. And for me, permaculture is very much about renewing and regenerating the landscape for my children, as much as it is about giving them a future that matters and a future that's sustainable and abundant. That is as important, if not more important, than my quality of life, right? So I feel like I'm often front-loading things for them so that they can continue that kind of work and they can have a more sustainable and regenerative life, which is really fulfilling. And I think it tends to get lost in a lot of conversations, and I don't know how to have that conversation, which is why I'm making this video. So I don't know what y'all think about social permaculture. If you've read any of the books on social permaculture, I highly recommend doing that and really broadening the way you look at permaculture. If you have experience with social permaculture or thinking about permaculture beyond gardening and seeing it as a design system for humanity, I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts on how to have that dialogue at a broader level. And also, if you have links to people that are doing that work, I know there are some. The Permaculture podcast has had some really good folks on, and also the Green Dreamers podcast has had some good folks on who talk about these things. So I just want to leave y'all with thinking about how we look at permaculture, and I try and look at everything in my life as if there are problems or issues or conflict, how can I turn that into a resource and how can I harness it and use it for forward movement and for regeneration and resilience. So I think that for me feels like the next step, and where I hope the whole permaculture community goes is thinking beyond my little property here, or thinking beyond this eco-village and thinking about mainstreaming permaculture and how we can do that, because it really is something that will benefit everybody across the planet. It will improve the quality of life and increase abundance for people and for landscapes. And I think it's really crucial we talk about it. So I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm going to go inside and sew and stay out of the heat. I hope you all stay cool in this weather. I can hear my neighbors mowing. I hope they stay cool too. And I will be back later this week with my promised last section of my garden tour for 2020. And I hope to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you.